Hello there, and welcome to Earth's History, where we look beneath the surface of accepted narratives, where we question what we think we know, where we ask uncomfortable questions about monuments that have stood for thousands of years, silent and enigmatic, holding secrets we may have barely begun to understand. Tonight, we're standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Giza, looking at this massive structure that has dominated the Egyptian desert for 4,500 years, and asking, what if everything we've been told about the pyramids is incomplete? What if what we see above the sand is only a fraction of what's really there? What if the pyramids aren't just tombs, aren't just monuments, but something far more complex, far more sophisticated, far more mysterious than we've imagined? If you've ever stood before the Great Pyramid and felt dwarfed by its scale, if you've ever wondered how ancient people moved 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing an average of 2.5 tons each, if you've ever questioned why these structures were built with such precision that we can barely replicate them today, even with modern technology, you're touching on mysteries that go deeper than conventional Egyptology acknowledges. The pyramids have been studied for centuries, examined by thousands of researchers, visited by millions of tourists, and yet they continue to surprise us. New chambers are discovered. Unexplained features are found. Technologies that shouldn't exist appear in ancient contexts. Wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfortable, settled, ready to descend beneath the sand with me, to explore passages that most people never see, to contemplate possibilities that challenge everything you learned in school about ancient Egypt. Maybe you're lying in bed as night deepens. Maybe you're in a contemplative space where your mind can wander freely. Maybe you're ready to question authority, to think independently, to consider that the official story might be missing something crucial. If this exploration into hidden depths brings you wonder, if it makes you question what else might be hidden beneath other ancient sites, if it connects you to mysteries that span millennia, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone else who believes that the past holds more secrets than we've discovered. So settle in. Let your breathing slow like the patient accumulation of sand over buried structures. Let your thoughts descend like explorers into darkness, following passages that lead to chambers we're only beginning to understand. And let's begin. The visible pyramid. What we think we know. The Great Pyramid of Giza, also called the Pyramid of Khufu or the Pyramid of Cheops, is the largest of the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau. It was originally 146.6 meters, 481 feet tall, though it's now about 138.8 meters due to the loss of the outer casing stones and the capstone. Its base covers about 13 acres, approximately 230 meters on each side. It contains an estimated 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks. The conventional narrative tells us it was built around 2560 BCE as a tomb for the 4th dynasty pharaoh Khufu. The construction took approximately 20 years, employed tens of thousands of workers, and represents the pinnacle of Old Kingdom pyramid building. The blocks were quarried locally for limestone and from Aswan, 800 kilometers away, for granite, transported to the site, and lifted into place using ramps, levers, and human labor. The interior consists of three main chambers: the King's Chamber, the highest, containing a granite sarcophagus; the Queen's Chamber, lower and smaller, though never actually intended for a queen; and an unfinished subterranean chamber carved into the bedrock beneath the pyramid. These chambers are connected by narrow passages: the Grand Gallery, the Ascending Passage, the Descending Passage. This is what tourists see, what textbooks describe, what Egyptologists have documented. And on its face, it's impressive enough. An enormous feat of engineering and organization, a testament to ancient Egyptian capabilities, a structure that has stood for 4,500 years. But what if this visible pyramid is just the tip of something much larger? What if beneath the limestone blocks, beneath the bedrock, beneath the Giza Plateau itself. There are structures we haven't fully discovered or haven't publicly acknowledged. What if the three chambers tourists visit represent only a fraction of the total internal volume? What if the pyramids were built not just on the plateau, but into it, incorporating natural cavities, carved chambers, and architectural features that extend far below the visible foundation? There are reasons to think this might be true, and they start with what we've discovered in just the last few decades. The hidden void. Scan pyramids and modern discovery. In 2017, a team of international scientists using muon radiography, a technique that detects cosmic ray, muons passing through stone, announced the discovery of a large void within the Great Pyramid. This void, located above the Grand Gallery, is at least 30 meters long and has a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself. The discovery was published in the journal Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific publications. This wasn't fringe archaeology or sensationalist claims. This was rigorous science using multiple detection methods: muon radiography, 3D reconstruction, infrared thermography, all confirming the same result. There's a large empty space inside the Great Pyramid that was previously unknown. The Big Void, as it's been called, raises immediate questions. Why is it there? What's its purpose? Is it a relieving chamber designed to reduce pressure on the Grand Gallery, or is it a sealed passage or chamber with its own function? Does it contain anything? Artifacts, texts, treasures? Or is it empty? And most importantly, if we found one hidden void in 2017 using modern technology, how many other voids, chambers, passages might exist that we haven't found yet? The Egyptian government has been cautious about further exploration. Drilling into the pyramid to access the void risks damaging the structure and potentially destroying whatever might be inside. Non-invasive techniques can detect voids, but can't tell us what's in them or provide access. So the Big Void remains unexplored, tantalizing, hinting at hidden architecture we're only beginning to discover. But this isn't the only suggestion of hidden structures. Ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and electrical resistivity tomography have all hinted at anomalies beneath the Giza Plateau. Areas where the density of rock is different from surroundings, suggesting either natural cavities or artificial chambers. In the 1990s, researchers using ground-penetrating radar claimed to have detected multiple chambers and passages beneath the Giza Plateau, some of them quite large. These findings were disputed, criticized as misinterpreting natural geological features. But some researchers maintain that the data suggests artificial structures, possibly predating the pyramids themselves. There are also historical accounts suggesting hidden chambers. Ancient writers, including the Greek historian Herodotus, writing around 450 BCE, described underground chambers beneath the pyramids, including a subterranean lake and chambers filled with artifacts. Medieval Arab historians wrote about extensive tunnel systems beneath Giza, some leading to chambers containing books, treasures, and astronomical instruments. Are these accounts accurate, or are they legends, exaggerations, fantasies? Without archaeological confirmation, it's impossible to say. But they've been remarkably persistent, spanning different cultures and time periods, suggesting that at least some people in the past believed there were hidden structures beneath Giza. The Sphinx and the Hall of Records. The Great Sphinx of Giza, the enormous limestone statue with a lion's body and human head, sits on the Giza Plateau near the pyramids. Conventional dating places its construction around 2500 BCE, contemporary with the pyramids, commissioned by the pharaoh Khafra, whose pyramid stands nearby. But the Sphinx has its own mysteries. In the 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch argued that the weathering patterns on the Sphinx enclosure are consistent with water erosion, not wind and sand erosion. Since the Giza area hasn't experienced sufficient rainfall to cause such erosion since the end of the African humid period, approximately 5,000, 6,000 years ago, Schoch proposed that the Sphinx might be much older than conventionally dated, possibly 7,000, 9,000 years old, carved during a wetter climatic period. This claim is highly controversial. Most Egyptologists reject it, arguing that the erosion patterns can be explained by other mechanisms, that there's no archaeological evidence of advanced civilization in Egypt that early, and that Schoch is misinterpreting geological data. The debate continues, with both sides presenting evidence and counter-evidence. But relevant to our discussion is another claim associated with the Sphinx, that there are hidden chambers beneath it, possibly containing records from an earlier civilization. The idea of a hall of records beneath the Sphinx has been popularized by various researchers, most notably the Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, an organization founded based on the readings of Edgar Cayce, a 20th century American mystic who claimed psychic abilities. Cayce, in trance states, described a hall of records containing the knowledge of Atlantis, buried beneath the Sphinx, waiting to be discovered. Setting aside the mystical claims, which have no scientific support, there have been geophysical surveys suggesting anomalies beneath and around the Sphinx. In 1991, Boston University conducted seismic surveys that detected several cavities beneath the Sphinx, including what appeared to be a rectangular chamber under the front paws. Dr. Thomas Dobecki, a seismologist who participated in the survey, stated that the data showed several features which are candidates for being voids beneath the Sphinx. However, Egyptian authorities have not permitted drilling or excavation to confirm whether these anomalies are natural geological features or artificial chambers. There are also visible sealed passages. On the rear of the Sphinx, there's a clearly visible shaft drilled into the body, now sealed with a metal hatch. What's down there? The official explanation is that it's a relatively recent archaeological shaft used for testing, leading nowhere significant, but the fact that it's sealed and inaccessible has fueled speculation. Similarly, between the paws of the Sphinx, there's a stone structure called the Dream Stele, placed by Pharaoh Thutmose IV around 1400 BCE, describing how the Sphinx spoke to him in a dream. But beneath the stele, some researchers claim there's a blocked entrance leading down into the bedrock. Without permission to excavate, we can't know what's there. But the combination of geophysical anomalies, sealed shafts, and persistent traditions about hidden chambers creates a compelling suggestion. There might be something beneath the Sphinx that hasn't been fully explored or publicly disclosed. The subterranean network hypothesis. Let's think bigger. What if the pyramids, the Sphinx, the temples, and other structures on the Giza Plateau are just the above-ground components of a much larger complex, most of which is underground? This hypothesis suggests that ancient builders, whether the dynastic Egyptians, a predecessor culture, or some combination, carved extensive chambers, passages, and galleries into the limestone bedrock beneath Giza, creating a subterranean network that serves purposes we don't fully understand. Why would they do this? Several possibilities. Religious / ritual purpose. Ancient Egyptian religion emphasized the underworld, the journey of the sun, god Ra, through the nighttime realm, the judgment of souls, rebirth and regeneration. Underground chambers might represent the underworld, with rituals conducted in darkness, in proximity to the earth, in spaces that symbolically connect this world to the next. Astronomical / scientific purpose. Some researchers have proposed that the Giza complex functioned as a sophisticated astronomical observatory, or even an ancient power plant. More on this later. If so, underground chambers might house equipment, instruments, or mechanisms that required protection from the elements, stability from being surrounded by rock, or secrecy. Storage. Underground chambers provide stable temperature and humidity, ideal for preserving artifacts, texts, treasures, Organic materials. If the ancient Egyptians wanted to preserve knowledge for future generations, underground sealed chambers would be sensible repositories. Infrastructure. Large construction projects require infrastructure, workshops, storage for materials, access routes for moving blocks, and supplies, water management systems. Some of the underground structures might be this kind of functional infrastructure, not mysterious at all, but simply the logistical reality of building something as massive as the pyramids. Defense, security. Underground chambers would be more secure than above-ground structures, harder to access, easier to defend, better protected from theft or destruction. If something needed to be kept safe, treasures, sacred objects, secrets, underground would be the place. Hidden architecture from multiple periods. Perhaps the underground structures weren't all built at once, but accumulated over millennia. Natural caves existed first, then were modified by early cultures, then incorporated into dynastic Egyptian construction, then reused in Ptolemaic and Roman periods, then forgotten and sealed, creating a layered archaeological palimpsest. Evidence for subterranean networks includes the Osiris Shaft, also called the Tomb of Osiris. This is a multi-level subterranean structure located near the Causeway of Khafra on the Giza Plateau. It descends through 3 levels, the lowest of which is about 30 meters below the surface, and features a chamber with a large granite sarcophagus sitting in water. The water table has risen since ancient times, flooding the lowest level. The Osiris Shaft was known to 19th century explorers, but was only systematically excavated in the 1990s. It's carved into the bedrock and features precise architecture, squared walls, level floors, smooth surfaces. Dating is controversial. Conventional archaeology attributes it to the 26th dynasty, around 500 BCE, but some researchers argue it could be older, possibly contemporary, with the pyramids, or even predating them. Why is there a massive sarcophagus 30 meters underground? The conventional explanation is that this was a symbolic tomb for Osiris, god of the underworld, used for religious rituals. But the effort involved in carving this complex, transporting the sarcophagus underground, and constructing the chambers seems disproportionate for a purely symbolic structure. Could it have served other purposes? Could it connect to other underground structures not yet discovered? The unfinished chamber. Beneath the Great Pyramid, carved into the bedrock, is a chamber conventionally called the unfinished subterranean chamber. It's rough, irregular, seemingly abandoned mid-construction. But some researchers note features that suggest it might not be unfinished, but deliberately created this way, or that work stopped when builders encountered pre-existing structures or natural features they couldn't or wouldn't modify. From the unfinished chamber, passages lead in various directions, some blocked by rubble, some leading to dead ends. One passage, explored by robots in the 1990s, extends horizontally for a considerable distance before ending. What's at the end? Why was it carved? Are there other blocked passages we haven't fully explored? The causeway chambers. The causeways connecting the pyramids to valley temples were originally enclosed, covered structures. Some researchers have proposed that beneath these causeways there are chambers or passages carved into the bedrock, used for transporting materials, storing supplies, or conducting rituals. Without excavation, which would require dismantling parts of the causeway, we can't confirm this, but architectural analysis suggests it's plausible. Natural cave systems. The Giza Plateau is limestone, which commonly develops cave systems through water erosion over geological time. Some of these natural caves might have been known to ancient Egyptians and incorporated into their construction. Sealed or blocked caves might exist beneath the pyramids, either deliberately sealed by ancient builders or naturally closed by geological processes. Medieval Arab accounts. Medieval Arab historians wrote extensively about underground passages beneath Giza. Al-Makrizi, 15th century, described tunnels connecting the pyramids, chambers filled with treasures, and subterranean galleries. While some of these accounts are clearly fanciful, others contain details suggesting the writers had access to structures now blocked or lost. Were they describing real features or embellishing rumors? The hydraulic hypothesis. Pyramids as water pumps. Here's where things get really speculative, but intriguing. Engineer Christopher Dunn proposed in his book, The Giza Power Plant, 1998, that the Great Pyramid was not a tomb, but a machine. Specifically, a device for converting Earth's vibrational energy into microwave energy using the pyramid's internal chambers as resonators and the aquifer beneath the plateau as a source of hydrogen. The hydraulic theory, proposed by various researchers, suggests that the pyramid's internal passages functioned as a hydraulic pulse generator or water pump. Here's the basic idea. The subterranean chamber would be filled with water from the Nile through underground channels. The water would flow up the descending passage. Valves or locks in the passages would open and close rhythmically, creating hydraulic pulses that could be harnessed for various purposes, lifting water to higher levels, generating pressure for other mechanisms, or creating vibrations with specific frequencies. The Grand Gallery, with its corbelled ceiling and precise dimensions, might have housed a mechanism for controlling these hydraulic pulses, perhaps a series of gates or sliding stones that could be opened and closed to regulate water flow. The King's Chamber, with its granite construction. Granite is piezoelectric, meaning it generates electric charge under mechanical stress, and peculiar air shafts, which might not be for air at all, but for conducting energy or fluids, might have been the reaction chamber where some kind of chemical or physical process occurred. Evidence cited for this theory includes water erosion inside passages. Some passages show erosion patterns consistent with water flow, suggesting these passages once contained flowing water. Salt deposits. Chemical analysis has found salt deposits in various chambers, suggesting water once filled these spaces. The sarcophagus as a resonator. The granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber, when struck, produces a specific resonant frequency. If filled with water or other fluids, it might function as a resonator in a hydraulic system. Precision engineering. The extreme precision of the pyramid's construction. Passages level to fractions of a degree. Stones fitted to fractions of a millimeter. Seems excessive for a tomb, but would be necessary for a functional machine where precise tolerances matter. Critics point out numerous problems with this theory. No evidence of the complex mechanisms, valves, pumps, piping, necessary for such a system. No evidence of a connection between the pyramid and an underground aquifer or the Nile. The chemistry and physics proposed don't quite work as described. There's a simpler explanation. It's a tomb, as mainstream Egyptology maintains. But the theory raises interesting questions. Why is the pyramid's construction so precise? Why are there unexplained features like the shafts, the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber, which might not be relieving chambers at all but have some other function? The carefully chosen materials. Granite from Aswan for specific chambers, limestone for others. If the pyramid incorporated water systems, for construction, for symbolic purposes, or for functional purposes we don't understand, then there should be evidence of water management infrastructure beneath the plateau. Channels, cisterns, drainage systems, possibly quite extensive, mostly or entirely underground, potentially still waiting to be discovered. The acoustic properties, sound and vibration. Another intriguing aspect of the pyramids is their acoustic properties. Researchers have found that the King's Chamber resonates at a frequency around 438 Hz, close to the musical note A. When sound is produced in the chamber, chanting, drumming, playing instruments, the chamber amplifies certain frequencies and dampens others, creating unusual acoustic effects. The Grand Gallery also has interesting acoustic properties. Its long, narrow shape with corbelled ceiling creates particular resonances. Some researchers have experimented with sound in the Grand Gallery and found it produces distinct standing waves at specific frequencies. Why would the ancient Egyptians care about acoustics? Several possibilities. Ritual purposes. Religious ceremonies might have involved chanting, music, or spoken words. If the chambers amplify these sounds, creating immersive acoustic environments, it would enhance the ritual experience, making participants feel they were in a sacred, specially constructed space. Acoustic levitation. Some fringe theorists propose that ancient Egyptians used sound to levitate stones, using specific frequencies to counteract gravity. This is highly speculative and lacks physical plausibility. Acoustic levitation is real, but only works on very small objects at extremely high intensities. Levitating multi-ton stone blocks with sound is almost certainly impossible. Communication system. If there are extensive underground passages, acoustic properties might have been designed to allow communication over distances, speaking or producing sounds in one chamber that can be heard in another, using the passages as acoustic channels. Consciousness alteration. Certain frequencies affect human consciousness, inducing trance states, altering brainwave patterns, producing emotional responses. If rituals involved inducing altered states, as many ancient religious practices did, designing chambers with specific acoustic properties might enhance these effects. Unknown technology. Perhaps most speculatively, some researchers suggest the acoustic properties indicate technologies we don't understand, that the pyramids functioned as machines using sound and vibration in ways we haven't discovered, for purposes we can't currently conceive. If acoustic properties were important to the pyramid's function, this has implications for hidden structures. There might be additional chambers designed with specific acoustic properties, possibly interconnected through passages that conduct sound, creating a complex acoustic network throughout and beneath the Giza Plateau. The alignment mystery, stars, solstices, and sacred geometry. The three Giza pyramids are aligned with remarkable precision to the cardinal directions, north-south and east-west, with deviation of only a few arc minutes. This level of precision required sophisticated surveying techniques and astronomical knowledge. Moreover, the three pyramids arrangement matches the pattern of the three stars in Orion's belt, a correspondence first popularized by Robert Bauval in the 1990s. The pyramids' relative sizes and positions mirror the relative brightness and positions of Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka, the three stars forming Orion's belt. Ancient Egyptians associated Orion with Osiris, god of the underworld and rebirth. The Milky Way was associated with the celestial Nile, the river of the sky. The alignment suggests the Giza complex was designed as a terrestrial representation of celestial patterns, as above, so below, making Giza a reflection of the heavens. But Bauval went further, proposing that the alignment specifically matches the position of Orion's belt around 10,500 BCE, not 2,500 BCE when the pyramids were supposedly built. Using astronomical software to calculate precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes which stars are visible at different times, Bauval argued that the pyramids might commemorate or reference a much earlier date. This sparked controversy. Most Egyptologists dismiss the 10,500 BCE date as unsupported by archaeological evidence. There's no evidence of civilization capable of building the pyramids that early in Egypt. But Bauval's supporters argue the alignment is too precise to be coincidental, that it suggests knowledge of precession, which requires long-term astronomical observations, and that it might indicate either earlier construction or a deliberate reference to an earlier epoch. If the Giza complex was designed to encode astronomical information, star positions, precessional cycles, solar and lunar movements, then it might contain much more encoded data than we've recognized. The positions of structures, the dimensions of chambers, the angles of passages, all might encode information, a kind of architectural library recording knowledge intended to survive millennia. And if information is encoded in the architecture, it might be encoded throughout the complex, including in structures we haven't found yet. Underground chambers might be positioned to reflect additional astronomical patterns. Passage angles might point to specific stars, or encode specific dates. The entire complex, visible and hidden, might be a three-dimensional representation of celestial mechanics, ancient astronomy preserved in stone. The construction enigma: how and why? Let's return to the most basic question: how were the pyramids built? Despite decades of research, this remains controversial. The conventional explanation involves ramps, either a single long straight ramp, spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid, or internal ramps within the structure. Workers quarried blocks, transported them on sledges, hauled them up ramps using ropes and manpower, and positioned them precisely. Experimental archaeology has shown this is possible. Teams have quarried blocks using ancient tools, moved them on sledges, lifted them with levers and ramps. It's labor-intensive, time-consuming, requires significant organization, but it works. With enough workers, estimates range from 10,000 to 100,000. Over enough time, 10-20 years. The pyramid could be built using Bronze Age technology. But there are problems. The precision. Many blocks fit together with gaps of less than a millimeter. The King's Chamber's granite blocks weigh up to 80 tons and fit together perfectly. How did workers position 80-ton blocks with millimeter precision using ropes and wooden levers? The quarrying. The granite for the King's Chamber came from Aswan, 800 kilometers away. How were 80-ton blocks quarried, transported, presumably on boats down the Nile, and then moved from the river to the plateau and up into the pyramid? Moving such weights is challenging, even with modern equipment. The speed. 2.3 million blocks in 20 years means placing about 300 blocks per day, every day, for 20 years. That's one block every few minutes, 24/7, which seems implausibly fast given the challenges of quarrying, transporting, and positioning each block. The alignment. Achieving near-perfect alignment to cardinal directions requires astronomical observations and precise surveying. The pyramid's base is level to within 2 centimeters over 230 meters, an astonishing achievement without modern instruments. The internal chambers. The Grand Gallery's corbelled ceiling is an architectural marvel. The relieving chambers above the King's Chamber, 5 separate chambers with granite beams weighing many tons, represent sophisticated engineering. How were these internal structures built while the pyramid was rising around them? These challenges have led some researchers to propose alternative theories. Internal ramps. Architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed that the pyramid was built using an internal spiral ramp, which would explain how blocks were lifted without requiring impossibly long external ramps. Thermal imaging and other techniques have found suggestive evidence of internal structures consistent with this theory, though it remains unproven. Water flotation. Some researchers propose that the pyramid plateau was temporarily flooded, allowing blocks to be floated into position on barges. This seems implausible given the volume of water required and lack of evidence for water management infrastructure on the necessary scale. Acoustic levitation. As mentioned, some fringe theories propose sound was used to levitate blocks. This lacks scientific support and physical plausibility at the required scale. Lost technology. Some researchers argue the precision and scale indicate technologies more advanced than Bronze Age tools and techniques, machines we don't know about, tools that haven't survived, methods that were lost. This is possible, but speculative. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which hasn't been provided. Multiple construction periods. Perhaps the pyramid wasn't built in a single 20-year period by one pharaoh, but over a longer time, possibly incorporating earlier structures, possibly modified and enlarged over generations. This might explain some anomalies, but contradicts the relatively consistent. Architectural style. The construction mystery matters for our discussion, because if we don't fully understand how the visible pyramid was built, we certainly don't understand what underground infrastructure would have been required to support that construction. Where did workers quarry stone if not on site? Where did they store materials? How did they access water? Where were workshops? How did they move blocks from quarry to construction site? The answers to these questions might lie underground, in passages, chambers, and infrastructure that haven't been found or haven't been publicly disclosed because they challenge conventional narratives about ancient Egyptian capabilities. The tomb problem. Where are the bodies? The Great Pyramid is supposed to be Khufu's tomb, but there's a problem. No mummy was ever found inside. No treasure, no funerary goods, no inscriptions identifying it as Khufu's tomb except for some quarry marks in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, and even these are controversial. Some researchers question their authenticity or interpretation. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty, undecorated, and was reportedly found empty by the first Arab explorers to enter the chamber in 820 CE. If the pyramid was Khufu's tomb, where's Khufu? Conventional explanations. Robbed in antiquity. The pyramid was looted by tomb robbers who removed everything valuable, including the mummy. This is plausible. Many Egyptian tombs were robbed, but the pyramid's entrance was supposedly sealed and hidden. How did robbers find and enter it? And why leave the massive granite sarcophagus, which has significant value? Alternative burial. Maybe Khufu was actually buried elsewhere, and the pyramid is a cenotaph, a symbolic tomb. Some pharaohs had multiple tombs or burial sites, but this seems like an enormous expenditure of resources for a symbolic structure. Destroyed by time. Maybe the mummy and grave goods decayed or were removed for other reasons, leaving no trace. But in the dry Egyptian climate, organic materials often preserve remarkably well, and you'd expect some traces, fragments of wood, cloth, or organic materials to remain. The absence of a body raises questions. Was the Great Pyramid actually a tomb, or did it serve some other primary purpose? If it wasn't a tomb, what was it? And if the accessible chambers don't contain Khufu's burial, might there be sealed chambers that do? Might the big void or other undiscovered spaces contain the actual burial chamber, still sealed, still intact, waiting to be found? This possibility excites archaeologists and treasure hunters alike. Somewhere in or beneath the Great Pyramid might be Khufu's actual burial, untouched, containing treasures and artifacts from the 4th dynasty, texts that might explain the pyramid's purpose and construction. Finding it would be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. But it also raises the possibility that the pyramid's purpose was never primarily sepulchral, that later Egyptians or early explorers misidentified it as a tomb, that we've been looking at it through the wrong conceptual framework for centuries. The age question. Older than we think. Most Egyptologists date the Great Pyramid to around 2560 BCE based on several lines of evidence. Historical records, ancient Egyptian king lists, and later Greek historians attribute the pyramid to Khufu, placing it in the 4th dynasty. Archaeological context. The pyramid fits stylistically and technologically with other 4th dynasty monuments. Radiocarbon dating. Organic materials, wood, charcoal, mortar, from the pyramid have been radiocarbon dated to around 2500 to 2600 BCE, though with some anomalies. Astronomical alignment. The pyramid's orientation is consistent with observations of the North Celestial Pole around 2500 BCE. However, some researchers question this dating. Geological weathering. Some geologists examining the Sphinx and surrounding structures argue that erosion patterns indicate greater age, possibly 7,000 to 10,000 years old. If the Sphinx is older than conventionally dated, might the pyramids also be older, or might there be earlier structures that the pyramids were built around or on top of? Astronomical alignments. As mentioned, Robert Bauval argues the Orion correlation aligns perfectly with the sky around 10,500 BCE. While mainstream Egyptologists dismiss this as a deliberate reference to an earlier date, rather than indicating actual construction date, some researchers take it seriously as evidence of greater antiquity. Advanced knowledge, the pyramid's mathematical and astronomical properties, encoding pi, phi, the golden ratio, the speed of light in a specific unit system. Earth's dimensions suggest knowledge that supposedly primitive Bronze Age cultures shouldn't have. Could this knowledge have been inherited from an earlier, more advanced civilization? Anomalous artifacts. Some artifacts from Egypt don't fit the conventional technological timeline. Precision machined granite vessels, jewelry techniques that seem too advanced, tool marks indicating harder materials than the available copper and bronze tools. These anomalies might indicate either greater capability than credited to ancient Egyptians or an earlier, more advanced source culture. The age question matters because if the pyramids or underlying structures are significantly older than 2500 BCE, it changes everything. It means there was an advanced civilization in Egypt or elsewhere that we don't know about, that conventional history is missing a major chapter, that we need to completely rethink human prehistory. Most archaeologists and historians remain skeptical of these radical redatings. The evidence, they argue, supports the conventional chronology, and anomalies can be explained without invoking lost civilizations or extreme antiquity. But the questions persist, and with new dating techniques and new discoveries, the debate continues. The underground. Water. Aquifers and ancient rivers. Beneath the Giza Plateau lies an aquifer, underground water-bearing rock layers. The water table has risen significantly since ancient times, which is why the lowest level of the Osiris shaft is now flooded. But in ancient times, before the water table rose, there might have been accessible underground water sources, springs or pools. Some researchers have proposed that ancient Egyptians incorporated these water sources into their religious and architectural complexes. Water was sacred in ancient Egypt. The Nile was life. The inundation was rebirth. Water was associated with creation, purity, regeneration. Underground water might have been especially sacred, representing the primordial waters of Nun, the chaotic waters from which creation emerged. If there are natural caves or cavities beneath Giza containing water, ancient Egyptians might have viewed these as sacred, as physical manifestations of the underworld, as places to conduct rituals related to death and rebirth. Some researchers have even proposed that the Nile once flowed closer to or partially beneath the Giza Plateau, that there were channels or branches of the river that have since dried up or been covered, and that these ancient watercourses might have been incorporated into the pyramid complex, used for transportation of materials, for symbolic purposes, or for functional purposes related to whatever the pyramids actually did. Ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity surveys have detected what appear to be anomalous features beneath the plateau that could be interpreted as water channels, cavities, or voids. Without excavation, their nature remains uncertain, but they suggest the subsurface hydrology of Giza is more complex than commonly recognized. If water systems exist beneath Giza, whether natural or artificial, ancient or geological, they might connect different underground structures, provide access routes that don't require surface travel, or serve functions we haven't imagined. Exploring these systems, if they exist and can be accessed safely, might reveal connections between structures, hidden chambers, or features that explain some of the pyramid mysteries. The electromagnetic anomalies. In recent years, researchers have measured unusual electromagnetic properties within the pyramids. The limestone and granite blocks, the pyramid's geometry, and the material's piezoelectric properties. Granite generates electric charge when under mechanical stress, create electromagnetic effects that some researchers find significant. The King's Chamber, built entirely of granite, has been found to concentrate electromagnetic energy. Some researchers have measured elevated electromagnetic fields in the chamber compared to surrounding areas. The specific frequencies and intensities measured vary depending on methodology and conditions, but multiple studies have detected anomalies. The pyramid's shape itself might affect electromagnetic propagation. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Applied Physics used theoretical modeling to predict that the pyramid would concentrate electromagnetic waves in its internal chambers and beneath its base, especially at radio and shorter wavelengths. The study was theoretical, not claiming the ancient Egyptians designed this intentionally, but it demonstrated that the pyramid's geometry has specific electromagnetic properties. Why would this matter? Several speculative possibilities. Energy generation or transmission. Perhaps the pyramid functioned as an electrical device, generating or transmitting energy. This ties into the pyramid power plant theories. While speculative and lacking concrete evidence, the electromagnetic properties keep this possibility alive. Communication system. Electromagnetic anomalies might indicate the pyramid was used for communication, either between different parts of the complex or possibly over longer distances. Radio waves and electromagnetic pulses can penetrate rock. If ancient cultures discovered this somehow, they might have used structures like pyramids as transmitters or receivers. Healing or consciousness effects. Some New Age theories propose that the pyramid's electromagnetic properties affect human consciousness, health, or biological processes. While mainstream science is skeptical, some researchers study how electromagnetic fields affect living organisms, and it's possible, though far from proven, that pyramid geometry creates fields with biological effects. Unintended consequences. Perhaps the electromagnetic properties are just accidents of the pyramid's materials and geometry, unintended and unknown to the builders. But these properties might have subtle effects we're only now beginning to detect and understand. If electromagnetic properties were important to the pyramid's function, or were recognized as significant by later cultures, there might be other structures designed with similar properties, possibly underground where they'd be shielded from environmental electromagnetic noise, where their effects would be more controlled and predictable. The sealed doors. What's behind them? In 1993, engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot up the southern shaft from the Queen's Chamber. At about 65 meters up the narrow shaft, the robot encountered a limestone door with 2 copper handles or pins. The discovery excited the archaeological world. What's behind the door? Is there a hidden chamber? Does it contain artifacts, inscriptions, treasures? In 2002, another robotic mission drilled through the door. Behind it, a small empty space and another door. What's behind the second door? We still don't know. Egyptian authorities haven't authorized further exploration. Similarly, the northern shaft from the Queen's Chamber also ends in a door, discovered by another robotic mission. What's behind it? Unknown. Why put doors at the end of these shafts? The conventional explanation is that the shafts and doors had symbolic significance. The doors representing gates to the afterlife, the shafts allowing the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to the stars. But this doesn't explain why doors were necessary. Why not just seal the shaft ends with solid stone? The existence of doors suggests there might be something beyond them, chambers, passages, or spaces that were deliberately sealed but left accessible in principle. Perhaps the doors were meant to be opened by someone with the proper knowledge or authority. Perhaps they guard something important. The fact that we found two doors, drilled past one and found another door, suggests there might be multiple layers of sealing, multiple doors in series, creating a kind of airlock or multi-stage security system. This seems excessive for symbolic purposes, but makes sense if something valuable or significant is being protected. What could be behind the doors? Speculation includes burial chamber. Perhaps Khufu's actual burial is sealed behind these doors, in a chamber accessible only via these narrow shafts, protected by multiple sealed doors. Treasure room, gold, jewels, artifacts sealed away for safety. Library, texts, papyri, records containing knowledge the builders wanted preserved. Symbolic objects, sacred objects with religious significance but no material value. Nothing. Perhaps the doors seal empty spaces, created for architectural reasons, or left empty because the shafts served some function that didn't require chambers at their ends. Until Egyptian authorities permit further exploration, we won't know. But the sealed doors tantalize, suggesting that the pyramid's interior is more complex than the accessible chambers reveal. That there are secrets still locked away, waiting for someone to open the doors. The curse and the cover-up. Conspiracy theories. No discussion of pyramid mysteries would be complete without addressing the conspiracy theories, the claims that authorities are hiding discoveries, that archaeologists know more than they're saying, that there's a deliberate cover-up of revolutionary findings. Various versions exist. The Hall of Records. Cover-up. Some claim that chambers beneath the Sphinx or pyramids have been found containing records from Atlantis or an advanced prehistoric civilization, but authorities are suppressing this information to avoid rewriting history, to prevent religious or social upheaval, or for other nefarious reasons. Egyptian government suppression. Some accuse the Egyptian government and the Supreme Council of Antiquities of deliberately blocking research that might challenge conventional narratives, particularly research suggesting the pyramids are older than officially dated or were built by a lost civilization. Motivations supposedly include nationalism, wanting to credit ancient Egyptians with the pyramids without foreign influence, tourism, not wanting to disrupt the established narrative that attracts visitors, or control, limiting who can conduct research. International Archaeological National. Conspiracy. Some claim mainstream archaeology is dogmatic, unwilling to consider alternative theories, and actively suppressing evidence that contradicts established paradigms. Researchers who propose radical ideas supposedly face career destruction, denied funding, excluded from conferences, ensuring heterodox views don't gain traction. Zahi Hawass as gatekeeper. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former Minister of State for Antiquities Affairs and longtime head of Egypt's archaeological establishment, is frequently accused by alternative researchers of blocking projects, suppressing findings, and maintaining strict control over what research is permitted and what discoveries are publicized. Hawass has indeed been gatekeeping figure, controlling access to sites, and sometimes clashing with alternative researchers. But whether this constitutes a cover-up of revolutionary discoveries, or simply standard archaeological practice, and protection of sites from pseudo-archaeological exploitation is debated. How much truth is in these theories? It's true that archaeological research in Egypt is tightly controlled. The Egyptian government limits who can excavate, requires permits, reviews research proposals, and maintains authority over sites. This is standard practice worldwide. Countries protect their archaeological heritage and regulate research to prevent damage, looting, and exploitation. It's also true that mainstream archaeology is conservative, slow to accept radical revisions of established chronologies and narratives. This is partly healthy skepticism. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and many alternative theories lack rigorous support, but it can also become dogmatic resistance to legitimate challenges. There probably are unpublished findings, discoveries made, but not yet announced, data collected, but still being analyzed, sites known, but not yet excavated. This is normal in archaeology. Research takes time, publication lags behind fieldwork, and not everything is immediately disclosed. But is there a massive cover-up of revolutionary discoveries? Probably not. The more sensational claims, chambers full of Atlantean records, ancient high technology, evidence of alien intervention, lack credible support. If such discoveries existed, keeping them secret would require implausible levels of coordination among thousands of researchers, officials, and workers across multiple countries and decades. Someone would talk. Evidence would leak. The more moderate claims that there are undiscovered chambers, that some findings are unpublished or underreported, that conventional dating might need revision, are more plausible and don't require conspiracy to explain. Normal archaeological processes, combined with caution about making claims before evidence is thoroughly analyzed, explain most of the supposed suppression. That said, it's worth maintaining critical perspective. Authority isn't always right, established narratives aren't always complete, and questioning official stories is healthy. We should evaluate evidence rather than blindly trusting or rejecting claims based on who makes them. The global pattern. Egypt in context. Egypt's pyramids aren't unique. Pyramid structures appear worldwide. Mesoamerica, the Maya, Aztec, and earlier Olmec cultures built pyramids in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. These pyramids are stepped, often with temples on top, and date from roughly 1000 BCE to 1500 CE. South America. Peruvian cultures built pyramid structures, including the massive adobe pyramid complex at Huasa del Sol, Sudan. The Nubian pyramids in Sudan, smaller and steeper than Egyptian pyramids, date from 700 BCE to 300 CE. China. China has numerous pyramid-shaped mounds, mostly burial mounds, but some are quite large and ancient. Indonesia. Gunung Padang, a megalithic site in Indonesia, has been claimed by some researchers to be a pyramid structure, possibly very ancient, 10,000 plus years, though this is highly controversial. Bosnia. The Bosnian pyramids near Visoko. Bosnia are claimed by some to be ancient artificial pyramids, though mainstream geology considers them natural geological formations called flatirons. Why pyramids? Several explanations. Convergent evolution. A pyramid is a stable, impressive structure that can be built without advanced engineering. It's wider at the base, narrower at the top, naturally stable against collapse. Different cultures independently arrived at this form because it works well for large-scale stone construction. Diffusion. Perhaps pyramid building knowledge spread from one culture to others through ancient contact, trade, or migration. Some researchers propose transoceanic contact between old and New World civilizations, though mainstream archaeology finds limited evidence for this before the Viking voyages around 1000 CE. Common source. Perhaps all pyramid-building cultures inherited the concept from a common predecessor civilization, the hypothetical advanced prehistoric culture that supposedly built or inspired the pyramids before recorded history. This is the most speculative explanation and lacks direct evidence, but is popular among alternative historians. Symbolic universality. Perhaps pyramids represent universal human concepts. Mountains connecting earth to sky, stairways to heaven, structures representing cosmic order. The pyramid form might arise naturally from human psychology and religious impulses, rather than from technological transmission. The global distribution of pyramids is suggestive but not conclusive. Most archaeologists favor independent invention, but the question of possible ancient connections remains open, especially in light of evidence like the sweet potato, South American origin, appearing in Polynesia before European contact, suggesting some level of trans-Pacific interaction. If there were a global prehistoric civilization or network of connected cultures sharing knowledge, Egypt's pyramids might be one expression of widespread architectural traditions, possibly the best preserved examples. And if Egypt's pyramids hide extensive underground structures, perhaps pyramids elsewhere do as well. Subterranean chambers, passages, and complexes we haven't found because we're only examining the visible structures above ground. The modern expeditions. What we're still learning. Archaeological work at Giza continues. New technologies allow non-invasive investigation, muon radiography, ground-penetrating radar, infrared thermography, 3D laser scanning, producing data about the pyramid's internal and underground structures without drilling or excavation. The Scan Pyramids project, which discovered the Big Void, continues gathering data. Additional anomalies have been detected, though most haven't been confirmed or announced pending further analysis. The project's goal is to create comprehensive scans of all Giza pyramids, potentially revealing hidden features. Other projects are surveying the Giza Plateau with ground-penetrating radar and other geophysical techniques, mapping subsurface features that might indicate chambers, passages, or other structures. Some of this work is academic, funded by universities and research institutions. Some is semi-commercial, funded by documentary productions or private sponsors. Results are mixed. Some findings are published in academic journals. Others appear in documentaries or popular books, and it's sometimes difficult to distinguish rigorous science from sensationalized claims. Egyptian authorities have sometimes been hesitant about aggressive exploration. Drilling into pyramids risks damaging them. Excavating beneath the plateau might destabilize structures or destroy undiscovered features. And there's political sensitivity. Alternative theories about lost civilizations or older dates can be perceived as diminishing ancient Egyptian achievements, leading to pushback from Egyptian archaeologists and officials who want to emphasize the ingenuity and capability of their ancestors. This creates a frustrating situation. We have technologies capable of detecting hidden structures, but using those technologies is restricted. We know there are probably undiscovered chambers and passages, but accessing them is difficult or forbidden. We're tantalizingly close to major discoveries, but bureaucratic, political, and practical obstacles prevent the final steps. Still, progress continues. Each new survey adds data. Each new technique reveals details. Slowly, incrementally, our understanding of Giza's subsurface architecture improves. And periodically, major discoveries are announced. The Big Void in 2017, thermal anomalies in 2015, new chambers found through robot exploration. Each discovery confirms what many suspected. The pyramids are more complex than we thought. There's more to discover, and the full story remains incomplete. What might be down there? Let's engage in informed speculation. Based on everything discussed, geophysical surveys, historical accounts, architectural analysis, comparative examples from other sites, and the logic of what would be needed to construct the pyramids. What might actually be beneath Giza? Quarries. The limestone for much of the pyramid came from local quarries. Where exactly were these quarries? Surface quarries exist, but were there also underground quarrying operations, mining limestone from beneath the plateau, creating cavities and passages that still exist, now sealed or forgotten? Workshops. Building the pyramids required workshops for shaping blocks, creating tools, preparing mortar, organizing materials. Where were these workshops? Underground spaces would provide stable temperatures, protection from weather, security for tools and materials. Storage chambers. During construction, massive amounts of materials needed storage: copper tools, ropes, lubricants for sledges, food for workers, water. Underground chambers would provide good storage conditions. Water management. The construction site needed water for workers, for lubricating sledges, possibly for concrete-like mixtures, if these were used, which is debated. Water had to be transported from the Nile, stored, distributed. This requires infrastructure, channels, cisterns, possibly underground to prevent evaporation and keep water cool. Burial chambers. The pyramids were tombs. Might there be multiple burial chambers? For the pharaoh, for family members, for priests, for sacred objects? The accessible chambers might be decoys or secondary chambers, with the primary burial sealed elsewhere, possibly underground, accessed by passages not yet discovered. Religious complexes. Ancient Egyptian temples often had multiple levels, with inner sanctuaries, crypts, and underground chambers for storing sacred objects, conducting secret rituals, housing priestly activities. The pyramid complex might include extensive underground religious infrastructure. Natural features incorporated. Limestone caves, underground water sources. Geological features might have been discovered during construction and incorporated into the complex, either for practical purposes or because they were viewed as sacred. Earlier structures. If the pyramids were built on a site with earlier significance, there might be pre-pyramid structures beneath them. Shrines, dwellings, even earlier monumental architecture from pre-dynastic or early dynastic periods. Lost and sealed areas. Over 4,500 years, passages might have been deliberately sealed, accidentally blocked by collapses or earthquakes, or simply lost as knowledge faded and later cultures forgot what was there. The pyramid complex has been modified, repaired, and explored by multiple cultures. Old Kingdom Egyptians, Middle and New Kingdom modifications, Ptolemaic and Roman visitors, medieval Arab explorers, modern archaeologists. Each period might have sealed or opened passages, creating a complex stratigraphy of access and closure. Libraries or archives. If ancient Egyptians wanted to preserve knowledge, texts, religious literature, or administrative records for posterity, sealed chambers in stable underground environments would be ideal repositories. Clay tablets in Mesopotamia survived because they were baked. Papyri don't survive as well, but in completely dry, sealed environments, they can last millennia. Might there be chambers containing texts, religious, astronomical, historical, literary, sealed to preserve them? The Hall of Records. Setting aside mystical claims, if some group wanted to preserve knowledge from an earlier period or culture, whether from a hypothetical lost civilization or simply from Egypt's own early history, creating a sealed chamber beneath a massive, durable structure like a pyramid would make sense. This is speculative, but not impossible. Until underground chambers are thoroughly explored, we can't rule it out. The most likely scenario is that Giza's subsurface contains a mixture of these features: quarries, storage, water management, religious chambers, natural caves, and possibly sealed spaces we haven't discovered. The full extent probably won't be known until comprehensive geophysical surveying is completed and authorities permit careful exploration of detected anomalies. The preservation problem. How do we explore safely? Exploring underground structures poses significant challenges. Structural stability. Drilling, excavating, or entering underground spaces risks collapse. The structures are 4,500 years old. Stone degrades, fills shift, and modern interventions could trigger failures that damage or destroy features we're trying to study. Preservation of contents. If sealed chambers contain organic materials, papyri, textiles, wood, mummies, exposing them to air after millennia of sealed isolation could cause rapid decay. Oxygen, moisture, and microbes introduced by opening chambers can destroy delicate materials within days or weeks. Proper preservation requires planning, environmental controls, and specialized techniques. Cultural sensitivity. The pyramids are Egyptian heritage, sacred to many Egyptians, and symbols of national pride. Invasive exploration by foreigners, especially if motivated by sensationalist theories, can be seen as cultural violation. Egyptian authorities understandably want to control research, ensure it's done respectfully, and prevent exploitation of their heritage. Tourism and site management. Giza is one of the world's most visited archaeological sites. Millions of tourists annually visit the pyramids. Maintaining site integrity while allowing public access is challenging. Major exploration projects might require closing areas to visitors, affecting tourism revenue that funds site maintenance and the broader Egyptian economy. Political and bureaucratic hurdles. Research in Egypt requires permissions from multiple authorities, navigating bureaucracy, dealing with political changes. Egypt's government has been unstable at times, and sometimes facing nationalistic sensitivities about theories challenging Egyptian achievements. These challenges mean progress is slow. The most promising approach is non-invasive investigation, using technologies that don't require drilling or excavation, gathering data remotely, building comprehensive models of subsurface structures before any physical intervention. Once features are detected and mapped, targeted, minimally invasive exploration can proceed. Small boreholes with fiber optic cameras, robotic devices through existing passages, careful excavation with full documentation and preservation protocols. This methodical approach frustrates those eager for dramatic discoveries, but it's necessary for responsible archaeology. Rushing in could destroy irreplaceable evidence, damage structures, or cause collapses. The ultimate question: why? We've explored what might be beneath Giza, how it might be discovered, and what challenges exist. But the ultimate question remains: why? Why would ancient Egyptians, or whoever built the pyramids, create such massive, precise, complex structures? The tomb explanation, while conventional, seems incomplete. Yes, pyramids were royal tombs, but the scale, precision, and sophisticated features seem excessive for simple burial. Other pharaohs were buried in smaller tombs that functioned perfectly well. Why did 4th dynasty pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, Menkaura, invest such enormous resources in these particular structures? Alternative explanations propose the pyramids served additional functions. Religious centers. Beyond being tombs, pyramids were temples, places for rituals, regeneration ceremonies, priestly activities. The extensive complexes around pyramids, causeways, valley temples, satellite pyramids, suggest sophisticated religious functions. Astronomical observatories. The precise alignments, the shafts pointing to specific stars, the encoding of astronomical data suggests the pyramids functioned as observatories or calendrical devices, tracking celestial cycles, predicting seasonal changes, maintaining astronomical knowledge. Power plants. The speculative theory that pyramids generated or transmitted energy while lacking solid evidence captures something important. The pyramids feel like machines, like they're built to do something, not just sit there. Their precision, materials, and complex internal architecture suggest functionality beyond symbolism. Initiation centers. Some esoteric traditions view the pyramids as initiation temples, where candidates underwent transformative experiences: ritual death and rebirth, consciousness alteration, spiritual enlightenment. The king's chamber's sarcophagus, never containing a body, might have been for initiation rituals, not burial. Time capsules. Perhaps the pyramids were designed to preserve knowledge, encoding information in their dimensions, alignments, and internal features, creating permanent records that would survive millennia, regardless of civilizational collapse. Markers or beacons. Perhaps the pyramids were meant to be visible from great distances, or even from space, though this seems fanciful, as markers, signals, or navigational aids, communicating something to distant observers or future generations. Combination of purposes. Most likely, the pyramids served multiple functions. Tombs, yes, but also temples, astronomical instruments, symbols of power, economic projects employing thousands, training grounds for engineers, and monuments encoding knowledge. Ancient structures often have layers of meaning and multiple practical and symbolic functions. The mystery of purpose is tied to the mystery of what's beneath. If the underground structures are extensive and sophisticated, they might reveal functions we haven't considered. If they're relatively simple infrastructure, it supports the conventional tomb and temple explanation. Until we explore thoroughly, we won't know. Conclusion: the invitation to mystery. The pyramids of Giza have stood for 4,500 years, surviving empires, invasions, earthquakes, climate change, and the depredations of time. They've been studied by countless scholars, visited by millions of people, analyzed with the most advanced technologies. And yet, they retain their mysteries. The Big Void, discovered in 2017, reminds us that even the most studied structure on Earth can surprise us, that there are spaces we haven't found, features we haven't documented, aspects we don't understand. The sealed doors behind the Queen's chamber shafts tantalize, suggesting secrets still locked away, chambers we haven't accessed, information we haven't recovered. The geophysical anomalies beneath the plateau hint at structures still hidden, passages still unexplored, chambers waiting in darkness for someone to find them. The persistent traditions of underground halls, subterranean galleries, and hidden libraries may be legends, or they may preserve kernels of truth, memories of features that existed, that some people knew about, that haven't yet been rediscovered. We're left with questions. What's in the Big Void? What's behind the sealed doors? Are there extensive underground structures beneath Giza? How much of the pyramid complex remains undiscovered? What was the pyramid's true purpose, or purposes? How old are they really? What knowledge might be hidden in sealed chambers? These questions have no certain answers yet, but they invite us to maintain wonder, to question assumptions, to accept that even the most familiar mysteries aren't fully solved. The pyramids stand as monuments not just to ancient Egyptian achievement, but to human curiosity, to our drive to understand, to build, to reach beyond ourselves. They're products of vision, organization, skill, and determination. And they're keepers of secrets, silent guardians of knowledge and history that we're only beginning to recover. Whether the pyramids are only the visible surface of something much bigger, extensive underground complexes, hidden chambers, architectural features extending deep into the bedrock, remains to be definitively proven. But the evidence suggests it's more likely than not. The pyramids have more to teach us. The Giza Plateau has more to reveal. And beneath the sand, beneath the limestone, beneath the bedrock, there are almost certainly spaces we haven't found, features we haven't documented, pieces of the puzzle we're missing. As technology improves, as political situations allow, as careful research continues, we'll gradually uncover more. Each discovery will answer some questions and raise others. Each chamber explored will provide new data and new mysteries. This is the nature of archaeology, of history, of human knowledge. We're always learning, always discovering, always revising our understanding. The story of the pyramids isn't finished. We're still early in the investigation, still scratching the surface, perhaps literally, of what's really there. So when you look at images of the Great Pyramid standing massive and mysterious in the desert, remember, you're seeing only part of it. Beneath that visible structure, there's more. How much more, we don't yet know. But it's there, waiting, silent, patient, holding its secrets until we're ready to discover them. The pyramids invite us into mystery, challenge us to question, demand that we bring our best science, our sharpest thinking, our most open minds. They reward humility, reminding us that ancient peoples were sophisticated, capable, and knowledgeable, and they punish arrogance, constantly surprising those who think they've figured everything out. They stand as testament to human achievement and as symbols of all we don't yet understand. They're monuments to the past and messages to the future, and they're incomplete without their hidden dimensions, their underground components, their sealed secrets. What if the pyramids are only the surface of something much bigger? The answer is, they probably are. And discovering what lies beneath might be one of the greatest adventures in archaeology, a revelation that changes how we understand ancient Egypt, human history, and our own place in the long story of civilization. Sleep well, dreaming of passages descending into darkness, of sealed chambers waiting to be opened, of knowledge preserved in stone, of mysteries that have endured for millennia and will continue until someone, perhaps in our generation, perhaps in a future one, finally uncovers what the pyramids have been hiding all along. The answers are there, beneath the sand, beneath the stone, waiting. All we need is the courage to look, the tools to see, and the patience to do it right. Good night, and may you walk through hidden passages in your dreams, discovering what's been there all along, just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to finally see it.